Here we go. Well, here we are, folks. Another Tuesday evening, and Tony Locantro is on in good form. We were just talking about Locantro bingo, so I'm sure we'll be playing some of that this evening. Always great fun to have Tony on, but he always makes some really, really good points too. I'll just start the pre-show in a little while just to give people a chance to come in. We've already got more than 250 views, so that's great. And just to give you a little bit of background here, the dogs are there. The studio's here, of course. Everything's set up. Tony's there, ready to come. We've got the multi-view and the chat and everything up as normal, all running. And the dogs are here. Oh, well, one dog. The other dog's around the corner at the moment. So you've got Luna, but not Meteor. So they're hopefully going to stay quiet. They've had their lunch, taken for a long walk. So hopefully they'll be good now. A lot to talk about tonight, of course, with everything that's going on at the moment. You can't make this stuff up. It keeps getting worse and worse. More and more conflicting signals. So we'll perhaps explore some of those things. And as Boss Man says, Tony has a tie on. Yes, he's looking very smart. I feel a bit underdressed, but nevertheless, I'm going to continue with my relaxed style, which is what I tend to do. Anyway, I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to start the show. I'll be back in just a moment. Well, good evening. Welcome to this live stream. And again, it's the 16th of July, 2024. I keep counting down till Christmas. Where's the year going? I want some more year, please. This is Martin North here from Digital Finance Analytics. Great to have you on the show this evening. We're going to have a very interesting conversation with Tony about bubbles and perpetual bubbles and even bigger bubbles and how different they are this time. So that'll be worth spending some time thinking about. And just before I bring Tony in, I will just remind you, as always, that we don't provide specific financial or legal advice. It's the general conversation only. We do moderate the chat, but feel free to put your questions and comments in. And if you'd like to ask a specific question of Tony or myself, if you use that Walk the World, that'll get to my attention. I've also enabled Super Chat, which means you can get your question to the top of the list, or indeed make a contribution to what we do around here. Always greatly appreciated. We don't do this for profit. We do this because we think there's a really, really important conversation to be had. With no further ado, let me bring Tony straight in. Tony, good to see you once again. How are you going?
Oh, fantastic, Martin, and a great community on chat. And I'm looking forward to tonight's presentation. And AC/DC never wrote a ballad, and I'm just going to stick to my usual formula, which is everyone knows the formula. I put together a bit of a slideshow. The slides, you're not going to learn a lot. They're just pointers towards learning a lot. And I've had to learn to do this show 100% sober because I've just hit 20 months without one sip of alcohol. And it's hard to do. It's hard to perform without under the influence of any drugs. So anyway, I'll do my best.
Excellent. Well, you do very well. And I should just point out, we did a show, not a live show, but a recorded show about your dietary changes and how those have had a huge impact on your health and well-being. And I do recommend people look at that show, Tony, because that was hugely well received. So many people said, gee, there's a really important message there.
Yeah, and the main takeaway was that through my research, the health and obesity epidemic has been caused by seed oils, which were created for machinery. There's all this bullshit in the world about fats, all these myths. If you take away anything from that, just cut out seed oils, cook with more friendly stuff, cut out processed foods. I've pretty much given up sugar, carbs, 6 days a week in the gym, and I'm turning 53 on Thursday. And I'll get nothing from my kids because they don't give a shit. And that's it. But no, that was well received, and I think we'll get towards 3,000 views of that. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about stuff not related to finance, but I'm here to talk about markets and the finance, Martin, because I've got 26 years of having a database of fear, greed, and stupidity. I've talked to thousands of people. I know what makes everything tick, and I'll do my best to relay that in this presentation.
Yeah, great. Just before we get started, Tony, it would be good, I think, just for people to understand. So somebody was asking in the chat, are you a financial advisor? And somebody else, in fact, Boston, I'll put this up, it's quite interesting. Did you raise money for a tech venture? So what do you actually do?
So just quick background, I was a New South Wales police officer up until 1998. I became a stockbroker. I actually deal in small cap stocks, 100% small caps. My aim is to raise money for mining companies, biotech companies, small industrial. To see them through, I've got about 500 clients. We'll go into a small stock and buy between 10 and 25% of the entire company, and I wait. And that's been my mantra. Luckily, I was on Sky Business, Your Money, Your Course. I was doing live Foxtel shows for 8 years. I've got a new financial media gig I start tomorrow, more about that to follow. But I look after mums and dads who want to have lotto wins. So it's not for the faint-hearted. This is so tough. And if you can't handle spending a couple of years down well over half, it's not for you. So that's what I do. I don't drink anymore. I exercise. I'm up at 5:30 Perth time every day. I'm always available. When I go on holidays, I was just in Koh Samui. Yeah, and the mobile phone was by the pool. So by the time someone called for an order, I was behind the screen in a minute. And I pride myself on being available. The market has gone against me pretty much for the last couple of years, but we have had some 10 baggers, believe it or not. But yeah, I've looked pretty stupid for a couple of years, Martin, and that includes the bet with Stephen Koukoulas. I actually bet him house prices would drop. Then not only did Liberal win the unlosable election for Labor, but then who had a global pandemic on their bloody Locantro bingo card? No one. And interest rates down at 0.1%. And anyway, yeah, so I've looked pretty stupid, but people might bag me because some of my companies are down, but behind the scenes, it's like a duck paddling underwater. So anyway, I think my time's coming. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I do. So I'm basically will fund small companies. I've got my problem children. I've got my good companies. So yeah, I'm right into financial markets. I'm still going to home opens here in my local area. I'm about 5-6 kilometers from the city. So yeah, just market driven, and my brain never stops, Martin.
Excellent. And Jason actually asked this question, do you have any exposure to crypto? Any thoughts on it? So whether you want to cover that in your presentation or now, I'll just sort of table the question at least.
I have clients that deal in that. It's like standing behind someone at a blackjack table and telling them to hit against a 2. I don't do that. I can't advise on an asset that's worthless. Let's face it, there's crypto now. There's probably 25,000 shitcoins now, and there's only about 9,000 religions, and every single one of them's right. Everyone should know that. Every one of them's right. So, no comment.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn over the show to you, Tony, and I'll let you run away with it. Just to explain, Tony's got some very, very posh slides which he's going to go through, and then we'll have a bit of a conversation and chat around it. While Tony's in the middle of his presentation, hold your questions. We'll come to them afterwards. But Tony, I'll leave the tiller to you. Go ahead.
All right, chuck it up. Yeah, so the everywhere and everything bubble. Everyone knows that the 4 most expensive words are this time it's different, or this time is different. For me, the 3 most expensive words in my life have been I love you, because that cost me 80% of my wealth, and a shitload of child support, which I'm still paying. So there's a lesson there, kids. There's the all-important disclaimer. I don't take into consideration your financial fortitude, your risk tolerance, what you're worth. None of this is to be construed as personal advice. All I'll do, all this information is true as I speak, maybe with a 5 to 7 second lag, but I'm not here to tell lies or bullshit. I have no ulterior motive. If you want to find out more, you can contact me. So that's the disclaimer. Read that at your own leisure. That's my view of the world. I go back to the classic movie Tropic Thunder, and there was a scene with Robert Downey Jr. and Ben Stiller, and I think you can read what goes on there. Perhaps not politically correct in this environment, but I put the slide up anyway, because I just think that sums up where we are in the world right now. It's certainly gone batshit crazy, and it's become even crazier. And I highly recommend that scene, one of the funniest scenes in movie history. And these days, I don't think you could get away with that anymore, guys. But yeah, never go full retard. Now, who'd have thought that the biggest star of the internet, I don't know how it happened, and poor Hock Tour girl has actually been trumped. I was actually concerned when her 15 minutes of fame was going to end. She's put out the merchandise. Apparently, there's a documentary about her. She seems nice enough, innocent enough. She's got that southern innocent girl. But who'd have thought that a random street interview, life-changing for her, talking about a sexual move, and suddenly we have what is all over the news about Donald Trump. And I was amazed at not only how the shooter could get so close, and how we've seen photos of the bullet just whizzing by. And I think that photo is just going to be iconic, like the ones in the Second World War with the US soldiers raising the flag. But it just goes to show you there's going to be a heap of conspiracy theories over this. There's heaps on the shooter, who I actually watched some videos of him. Leave that to your own devices. But, the world was going crazy over a young girl, and now suddenly look what's happened. And I didn't expect, this was not on my bingo card, anyone. And I think even though Donald's defiant, I think his mentality around events is going to change, and maybe he gets a Pope-mobile. So this is how crazy the world's gone. You look at Oilers girl, gets a Playboy spread just by flashing herself at a game. Crazy airplane lady. We've got the chick filler girl, and we've got the WTF girl who's making a bit of a comeback. But I just think society needs this. We just need the mother of all reboots, and I think it's coming. I go back to my life in the 70s, I actually grew up in Manly Vale. That was the first place I lived in. Dad paid 3.5, 4 times his salary. We then moved to Terry Hills. A lot of years in French's Forest, beautiful new estate there. Then when I was a police officer, everyone's probably sick of this story, but I got stationed at Bondi. I was trying to get stationed at Summer Bay, but because that's the most dangerous police station on earth. But they put me at Bondi. And nearby, they were selling a block of units. It was about 500 metres from the beach. And I managed to buy one with the help of the banker mum and dad. I think they lent me $6,000 in those days. And I paid 2.4 times my yearly income for that 1-bedroom unit. And now, this is how batshit crazy the world's gone, guys. That unit would trade at 13 times price to income. So that shows you. And the other thing about Bondi in those days, I could get a wave and there was no Chemist Warehouse. So life was pretty good. Now, looking at New Zealand, it's not a slice of heaven anymore. It's probably the most famous song to come out of New Zealand. And rest in peace, Richard Simmons. He did the Air New Zealand do some hilarious safety videos, and I was actually flying on my honeymoon to the States on my because I'd made my second mistake. And yeah, that was the safety video. And yeah, Richard Simmons' death, along with Shannon Doherty's death, went relatively unknown with Trump. So Martin put together an excellent show, a brief one on the Chile economic winds hitting the Kiwi property market. And I think it's just unbelievable. I thought that Canada would lead us into salvation. Well, not salvation, into the shit. But it's actually the people over the ditch who are, I think, the biggest leading indicator for Australia. And I know in the old days, the Japanese thought that they were immune to speculation because they digested food differently, but we are not dissimilar to Kiwis. They're a tiny country, rugby mad, but their house prices are just astronomical. And as you can see, if you have a look at Martin's show, I think it's worthwhile. Year-on-year sales off an absolute cliff. And if you look at Auckland, that to me, that's in a liquid market. And you can get a liquid markets like we had it in the NASDAQ. We had it with lithium. Once a market suffers from a lack of liquidity, buyers will step back. And as I said on countless shows, it only takes a real estate agent with the desire to eat first and buy a BMW to cause a 20% correction in a suburb just like that. And if you look at that house price index from the peak, that is frightening reading. And I think I'm going to call the east coast of Australia the Pantene in relation to property. And anyway, it won't happen overnight, but as sure as shit, it's going to happen. And New Zealand, sadly, is the leading indicator in this case. And if you look at Auckland, beautiful city, down 22% from the peak, it's coming. And I know I go back to my bet with the kook. Again, no one would have forecast that. My main theme was sell Sydney and move to Perth, but I doubt many people can let go of the Harbour Bridge and all that congestion. So one of the leading indicators in New Zealand was the gig economy. And Uber drivers were complaining quite some time ago that their earnings pretty much had fallen off a cliff. And as you can see there, some were working 60 hours a week to gross $20 an hour. And I think that's starting to be reflected here in Australia by certainly a number of factors. So my wife, my future wife, she's out there driving, and she's a barometer of the economy. And she picked up 4 alpha men, and I can see the look of, I don't know if that's a look of fear in her eyes. I actually gave her a little bit of a warning. I said, you do look more attractive than usual tonight, and be in there for some attention. But yeah, I just looked at that shot. I don't think people realize that what can happen is disgusting. And it does, it's going to perturb a lot of people from the gig economy. But she's noted that her earnings they've nosedived. People aren't spending in Perth. You might see all the restaurants are full and coffee shops. But again, there's just been a massive influx of immigration, and there's not enough jobs to support it. And I had to laugh. Someone was telling me about Darwin, how they ended up with far too many Uber drivers for the population, and it just collapsed. And they actually protested here at the airport in Perth in April. And again, where are we going to put all these people seeking these jobs? Because a lot of immigrants are doctors or lawyers in their own country, and they come here to earn below the minimum wage. So again, that started in New Zealand, that trend. Now let's go to the cost of living. I'm the Minister of Finance and Shopping in my household. A lot of that food in that picture I won't touch because it's essentially junk food. But I was at Coles recently, and my future wife loves the Crank protein bars, and they were half price. So I tend to raid Coles stores, and I think one store I was scanning 7, and then suddenly the scanning machine stops and an attendant comes over, and she actually looked at the video of me scanning these protein bars, and then she goes into the bag and does a count. And I raided 3 Coles stores that day, and every store they counted. And I was just shitting myself for a minute as to what if I actually didn't scan one. But the cost of groceries through the roof. Being carnivore, I tend to suss out the fattier mince, which is cheaper. I can often buy decent Scotch fillet, the budget one for $20 a kilo. I'll go to the butcher and get offcuts. I'll get some mince mixed in with some offal. Offal's great, but none of that additional garbage. But families would be struggling, and it's just taking a huge amount of the income. They're putting security tags now on meat. And the one thing I think still yet to come in Australia is crime. I think we're going to have a massive increase in crime. You'll see gangs push trolleys through supermarkets, buy meat, try and steal razor blades, grooming products for a quick sale. But yeah, and the price of olive oil through the roof. I don't cook with olive oil, but you're looking at $20, $27 a litre in some cases. So good luck. But in Perth, we've got a Guinness bubble. So they're all the Irish pubs. My wife drops the Irish too. And I don't think these Irish give a shit about buying a house or investing in the stock market. I think they're there to get written off, and they're doing the best thing for Guinness. I would rather drink melted tar from the road than Guinness. Anyway, I've been sober for 20 months, so that's all good. So yeah, we've got a Guinness bubble. Anyone wants to come to Perth? So I look at what's happening in the Perth real estate market, and even though I'm comfortable with what I bought, I think I bought extremely well where I live. I'm not far from the city. I'm about 10 k's from the beach. It's just really not. It's got a good vibe, this place. As you can see, the fish tank in the back. But I don't need to upsize. If I get sick of this place, I'll just paint a wall or put up some artwork. But I certainly looked at the likes of Camillo and Armadale. My wife used to live at Camillo, so I got to know the suburb quite well. Armadale, another rough suburb, relatively speaking, but these had the massive increases. Shelley, Alfred Cove, all aspirational suburbs. So you can see there some cheap areas in Perth, but what I've been speaking to agents who want my place, they want to list my place, and they're saying that overseas investors or East Coast investors are flooding these suburbs and not even looking at the places, and most of them are asbestos-riddled shitholes. Another record high Australia can be proud of is that cocaine, meth has hit a record high, and how they measure this is through wastewater. So Australia, you ought to be congratulated. We're turning into a country of methylated spirits. So anyway, some of these places you can buy, and you are within close proximity to a meth lab. And anyone wants to learn how to get into the industry, you just watch Breaking Bad. Now, I have always maintained that outside of the methylated spirits areas, that there are some really good suburbs in Perth. My favourite, if anyone's looking to move over here, is Nollamara. Nollamara now, it used to be a suburb when I was, you walked around, you'd see lots of nangs. So nangs are the things that kids get high on because you decorate cakes with it. Since they've banned nangs, now what you see in some of these areas are bottles of cough mixture around. So it's not the elderly taking their cough mixture. It's just what kids are doing to get high. And my view of this suburb is that you got to have a riffraff element to get in at a good value level. And I noticed that stock in Nullamara is starting to build. And the sister suburb, Yokine, which has a much more prestige reputation, as you can see, there's quite a price discrepancy. And I would always love to live in Mount Hawthorn. I actually lived in Mount Hawthorn in a unit, but to me, that's an aspirational suburb, but you can buy within five kilometres of Mount Hawthorn and you save a few $100,000. But as you can see from this map I'm about to show, that house in Nollamara, I calculate the centre of Perth as Yagan Square. That's controversial, but you are 10 kilometres from Yagan Square. You can see Big W, Karrinyup to the left. Karrinyup is one of the best shopping centres, bar none, in Australia. It's actually relatively new. The only thing is when you go there, you've got to take a photo of where you park, because I've actually been lost in that shopping car park. You are close to Scarborough Beach. You are also close to areas like Floreat, Floreat's Poor Man's Cottesloe, which is another great suburb. You can see there, if you like the casino, it's not far from the casino. It's an eclectic mix of people. You've got Perth Airport. And more importantly, you've got Optus Stadium, which is seamless. It's one of the best stadiums in the world. So to pay some of these places in Nollamara, you can pay $4 if you've got the renovation bug. You are, as I said, there is a riffraff element around, but I think the riffraff will get priced out. There's no meth labs I know of, no drug operations, but you are pretty much close to everything. And I can just see these areas regenerating. You'll see knockdowns, you'll see more terraces, villas, and I think that the upside really exists there because the easy money essentially has been won in the likes of Camillo and Armidale. So yeah, Nollamara, still my top tip if you're looking to move from Sydney. You could probably sell your 3-bedroom knockdown in Campsie and buy 3 houses in Nollamara. I'm still on X, and Parapower put this tweet up. I'll still call it a tweet, that someone who bought in Eastwood in October is now looking to flip. For me, if you look at stamp duty, holding costs, interest, then you look at the fact that I think they've done a paint job. They've built a beautiful new letterbox, which probably cost $50,000. It probably took them 6 months to get a builder for that letterbox. But to me, that's just how ridiculous you guys have it, those in Sydney. That is just absolute lunacy. When I was a policeman, I used to patrol out around that area. Certainly wasn't blue chip like it is now, but obviously that paint job, I think they've painted it. They've made that garage doors quite prestige. Geez, I hope they get out of it. I hope they get out of that sale. That would be great. But where there's a will, there's a way. And this Parapower floated, he didn't float it. He put forward this land flip. So they bought the land in December and they flipped it a few days ago for 3.4. I haven't got out the New South Wales stamp duty calculator. Surely the agent discounted the the fee on that one. So I don't know how much profit was in that. Maybe someone with a stamp duty calculator could put that in the comments. That'd be interesting. But to me, that is a good sale and probably the biggest get out of jail that they'll ever see. Now, I'm highly recommending an article by Matt Barry. It's called "Put Another Aussie on the Barbie," and putting an Aussie on the Barbie, I guess, is the equivalent of being economically sandpapered to death for those playing Locantro bingo. It's quite a lengthy article by Matt. He's put lots of graphs in, and we've got to look at the real disposable income per capita. And not only have our drug use has reached record highs, but our real disposable income, we really only have beaten Austria. And, g'day, mate. And look at that. That's horrific. So that's how backwards we've come. My wife is Hungarian, so they've had an increase, 8.5%. I mean, maybe I need to go there and retire, but unfortunately, their leaders, good mates with Putin or Zelensky or who, I don't know who Joe called him. I don't know if he got mixed up with a comedian, Putin. I don't know. Anyway, that was just a gaffe. So anyway, that's looking good for Hungary. Spain just won the Euros. Portugal, from my reading, is one of the best places to retire. Well, it probably is for the next year until it gets overrun with people anyway. So yeah, well done, Australia, another record. Sydney median house price, that's crazy. I can understand why we had those record low interest rates. Just think you could go to your bank and get 1.99% fixed for 2 years, and then suddenly you hit the 6% mortgage cliff. I did a little bit of reading, and people were suggesting that Locantro interest rates are never going to rise in our lifetime. And I looked at it, they were at 0.1. Money was flooding into the system. So I actually went and fixed mine for 5 years at 2.64. I've got 2.5 years left till my mortgage cliff, but I'm going to have a 10, 20 bagger, 50 bagger by then, because one of my companies is either going to make a medical breakthrough or drill into the biggest mine ever seen. So I'm confident in that. But yeah, I'm certainly going to start preparing for my mortgage cliff. Where do I think things are heading? As I mentioned, the long-term average on price to income is 3 to 4 times. Sydney's only now at 13.8. I can see the median price getting well below $1 million. That's my forecast. Remember, it's Pantene. It won't happen overnight, but as sure as shit, it's going to happen, because this time isn't different. We've had circumstances that have created the mother of all bubbles. The headlines in the Daily Telegraph will be showing median price below $1 million. That would be the front page. And that is my forecast. So if anyone thinks that 13.8 times price to income is sustainable or the norm, I think you've got another thing coming. And Perth property has been in the mother of all bear markets for many years now, and finally we're outperforming the country. And I go back to 2006 because Perth was actually more expensive than Sydney, albeit briefly. And apparently we have one of the greatest tourist spots in the country in Kings Park. So that's somewhere else you can walk around and admire the view. But that's just an accident waiting to happen, and it's going to end, and it's going to end badly, like every other speculative bubble on Earth, and it never ends well. And Morgan Kelly rightfully pointed out that you tend to lose 70% of your gains in every OECD housing bubble, and this time I can assure you is not different. Anyway, I look forward to that. I'll probably look wrong for a bit longer, but anyway, And I think the challenge for people is they're too scared to sell. How can you? Surely you're not going to switch unless you're downsizing, but rentals are so tight, and I guess families now it's going to be hard for them to get out, not realizing that selling into this irrational exuberance could net you a lotto win. And then if you just decide to live it a little bit rougher for a couple of years, you can either get back into the market or rent and take that tax-free windfall. But if you stay in, you're in the sinking ship. So I don't understand that price dynamic. Matt Barry's article has that table. Richmond, Virginia, 5 times. There's always economic and social factors. Might be relative to the number of meth labs or guns. Milwaukee, where Donald's having his rally, 5 times. Obviously, probably not the nicest place to live, but if you want to go out and join the methylated spirits in Australia somewhere, you can. I actually really like Dublin, probably because when I was following Pearl Jam around Europe, that was one of the best concerts. I like the greenery. I like the people. I like the vibe. Obviously, the Celtic Tiger economy collapsed big time when they allowed foreign companies to come in and pay sweet fuck all tax. That all collapsed. Raleigh, North Carolina. I went to South Carolina. It was okay. They had a beach. They had the rainbow houses. Singapore. I don't know about Singapore. Apparently, you pay a lot for a motor vehicle. I don't know if I could handle 100% humidity every day. San Diego, beautiful. Toronto, yeah, but look at Sydney. That was at 13.3. Only just behind the perennial overvalued city in Hong Kong. So as you can see, there's quite a disparity between the countries on price to income. It's not the only factor. We do have, in Australia, we have the best congestion. We have the best immigration. And we have terrible systems. We have huge waiting lists. We have other countries probably don't have a duopoly in the supermarkets where they just gouge us. I mean, there's just so many advantages living here. Now, the stock market, the Dow Jones has closed at an all-time high, over 40,000. Obviously, the finance channels love to promote records. There's the S&P 500. There's actually, I think there's 505 stocks in it. Don't quote me on that. But largely, the S&P 500 has been driven by the Magnificent Seven. So 7 companies have driven that index to a 48% gain over 2 years. God knows what the other 498 companies are doing. But either we're going to get the mother of all AI collapses and that index will correct. But, oh, geez, the shorts have been burnt, so to speak. And it's a case of, it's a market really, it's gone against fundamentals. So anyway, markets can remain irrational longer than we can remain solvent. So there's a chart of the Dow, 40,211. If you look at the left, you can see what happened in COVID. But COVID was pretty much a V-shaped recovery, and away we go. So again, I'm just wondering if that bullet, as Dennis Cometti would say in commentary, it's centimetre perfect. I was just wondering how close we were to absolute financial and social mayhem if that bullet had hit the target. And I guess you can go back and look at if that soldier shot Hitler dead, or you look at this butterfly effect. It's quite interesting that we could be living in absolute anarchy at the moment. But Donald got up, he gave the fist pump, and the Dow Jones can go on its merry way. but in my view, that the fundamentals don't match what's happening. Markets are overbought, but you've got to remember that it's a limited number of companies. So again, just another bubble. My favorite commodities, precious metals, are gold and silver. I've aligned my clients strongly into silver. We're through physical silver purchases, through ETFs, through depository programs at the Perth Mint, even though the Perth Mint's come under a bit of scrutiny. But that silver price looks fantastic. There has been quite a lot of hype into forming a bit of a short squeeze. So if you're on X, put in hashtag silver squeeze and you'll get every conspiracy theory under the sun. The gold price, another great performance, but apart from the majors, Australian gold stocks have not performed. So yeah, the fundamentals haven't caught up to the gold price at the moment. Anyway, that's interesting. Then if you look at the performance over many years in both gold and silver, they're fairly even. Obviously, gold has outperformed over 20 years, but a 6-month performance in silver is great, and I'd take that yearly performance. But again, yeah, they're my two favorite commodities. I've been in other bubbles, uranium and the likes. So again, what I do for my clients is I find value in the sector. I find small companies that can survive through any gold price environment. And I should add that when I was buying up Perth property, when it was cheap, the gold price was $251 US an ounce. And I go back to 2000, 2001, and we still actually had a vibrant gold industry even at that price, because the gold companies' profits were relative to their costs. So if the gold price is low, normally the costs of labor are low. So anyway, gold, silver, that's where I'm at. Lithium has been the mother of all bubbles. You look at those spot prices, that's an absolute disaster. You look at the share price in blue of Ganfeng Lithium's share price. Again, the calls were that this is forever. There's not enough supply of lithium. EVs forever. But at the time, I calculated there's about 1,400 years supply of lithium. And with lithium, you always run the risk that there's going to be oversupply, usage of EVs doesn't hit the targets, or they come in and have a new battery like the sodium ones that are starting to create a bit of noise. And hydrogen, even though hydrogen's behind, I know Twiggy Forrest has a bit of a hydrogen strategy when he's not out visiting important people. I know there's companies now with hydrogen buses. So that was the mother of all bubbles. Lithium companies capped at $5-10 million, got over $1 billion. And now it's, unfortunately, I don't like to see it because that speculative money disappears. But a lot of those companies have just turned to utter shit. So anyway, that's lithium. Interestingly, the people can't sell their Teslas. It's taking some of them years. Elon's discounted the crap out of them. And I've read some really positive reviews on the BYD C-Line 6 as a hybrid, super hybrid. And there's a lot of hybrid vehicles. Toyota's well-renowned in the hybrid space, the plug-in hybrids. So really, Tesla, bit of a status symbol. In some cases now, they're just looking like an expensive iPad. So again, bubbles just don't last. Apart from women, one of my biggest mistakes has been cars, but I'm not going to pay really over 40 grand ever. I'm just not into prestige cars. But when I was a cop, I needed to have a Commodore, and Yeah, I've just wasted so much money on cars. Kids, if you're out there, do never, ever borrow money to buy a depreciating asset if you don't take anything away from this. So in life, there's always going to be depressing periods. That bear probably represents what I've been through over the last couple of years, despite having a handful of 10 baggers, some good corporate deals. But what I've done for my clients is we're well positioned in quality companies that will mount a fight back. I refer to these companies as the red-headed stepchildren of my life. Some of them have freckles and some of them are currently in prison. But that's what you've got to have when you take risks such as I do. I think it's educated research, and I think all I'm trying to do is find the bigger companies of tomorrow whilst they're small companies. We've had a lot of success at that. And I'll tell you where to find a bit of my story in a sec. Now, I think instead of hook to a girl, Joe Biden, Zelensky / Putin, I think that is the woman we all fear. I actually think she's scarier than my 2 ex-wives combined. Michelle is someone you'd rather have as your school teacher than someone delivering bad economic news. And I just hope that there is a bit of reprieve for home owners who are struggling to sell to a greater idiot, because I think a rise now would really kill sentiment. And to me, the barrage of downside pressure is going to come from investors. Once investors realise that the capital gains gravy train is over, they're going to start to liquidate stock. Real estate agents need to eat, and it just all turns to shit. So anyway, she certainly doesn't have an excellent bedside manner in that photo. So I think Australians, instead of these internet TikTok disposable stars, should be focused on this lady. So my faith in humanity is restored when I saw that bin full of the green bags, and the bin not far from it is empty. I just love how people follow other people. That's my dog. His name's Colin. We rescued him from the shelter at Shenton Park, and his name was Achilles. And we're actually enjoying Colin from account. So I said, well, why can't we call the dog Colin? So that's him. He's beautiful. I get my 10,000 steps a day with him. Again, and I only tend to go home when he fills one of those green bags, but I can assure you that I actually put it in a different bin. I mean, that's just human nature. But it does show me that there's always going to be an endless flow of dumb money, and the dumb money always comes towards the end. And I think we're in this everywhere, everything bubble. And actually, one of my favorite quotes I came up with, it's a bit of a mishmash, is that fear is temporary, greed is perpetual, and human stupidity is infinite. So anyway, that's my dumb money slide. And I recorded a live Zoom on the 11th of July. It goes through my background on speculation, my hits and misses. It tells a bit of my story, how I got involved in the market, and I'll have that available on my YouTube channel. Just put in Tony Locantro. And that's all, folks. And there's 2 of my favorite proteins in that slide. Although duck is very hard to cook. I always tend to have it a bit dry, but as I said, there's more potassium in bacon than a banana. Anyway, that's all, Martin.
Thanks, Tony. A very thoughtful walk there through some really, really important information. I thought I might just throw this little slide up here. Let's do it now. So this was actually, it came out today, and thanks Cookie Boy for sending it across. This is from the latest NAB Consumer Sentiment Survey. And there is a really, really important message here about households clamping down simply because the cost of living pressures have prompted households to increase their budget costs in several key areas. But spending on children and pets have largely escaped the chop. I thought that was quite interesting. Aussies have become forced to be more budget conscious with their spending habits. And the interesting counter to that, though, is that NAB says that NAB's high interest rate savings accounts have risen 25% in the past year. So there is a really interesting contradiction, and I think there's a whole bunch of contradictions going on at the moment. And one that I keep coming back to is the pressures that we're seeing from some people are huge. You know, they're not being able to get through. They're having to take significantly difficult decisions just to get by. But there are others that are actually doing quite a lot better than that. And in fact, you know, if you look at it from those who don't have a mortgage and are not having to pay rent, they're not actually struggling the same amount. So in a way, the signals are quite messed up at the moment between where we are and, you know, where others are. And another way of looking at that is this one. This is actually, again, from Cookie. You know, the ASX topped 8,000, just dropped back slightly now. And the question is why? Well, because the US actually is perhaps going to cut rates. Powell came out again overnight and said that that was likely now. But Perpetual's head of investments, Matt Sherwood, said Australian market is being sucked in to Wall Street's rally. Caution the economic outlook remained uncertain given still high inflation and the risk that the RBA may choose to lift rates next month. So what we're actually doing is seeing investors overlooking the impact of higher for longer rates in Australia and the potential rise in bad debts if the RBA has to push rates higher again. And also, of course, Australian shares have been lifted by Aussie banks, which are massively expensive. And frankly, I don't understand why the CBA has now overtaken BHP as the biggest stock on the market. It doesn't make any sense to me. So again, what I'm seeing is this conflict between one end and one view and the other view. And that's why it's quite complicated. And that's why I'm with you, Tony. I think this time the bubble is different because those conflicts and those differences of opinion will have to play out. And I think probably sooner than many people think. It's interesting that wherever you look, you know, you can see the same old problems. But here's just one final thought. On one hand, reports came out last week that investors were running to the exit and selling their investment properties left, right, and centre, right? And that yet on the other side, we saw a significant hike in investor lending. This is actually the number of investment loans made. So what we're seeing is more investment churn. So some investors are selling because they've got no choice. Others are piling into the market. So again, there are so conflicting signals wherever you look. And to me, this is why what we're seeing at the moment is actually unsustainable.
Well, my definition of a market is a collective of people with no fucking idea what they're doing. And that drives prices overvalued, undervalued, or arguably fair value. And what this country now is facing is utter complacency in financial markets. We've forgotten what 1,000 down night on the Dow looks like. It's coming and it's going to hit. And we've got funds that, you know, a fund manager doesn't want to miss out on his Mossman mansion. They need to perform as well as other fund managers. So Commonwealth Bank, now around $130 a share, outperforms at a time where the banking gravy train is stuck at the station. So, but the problem is, when do you start buying ETFs betting against banks? If you bet earlier, you would have been wiped out. So I think there's a lot of stocks that are overvalued. I think AI is the mother of all bubbles. Yeah, there's going to be some uses from it, but we need humans. A lot of tech stocks, earnings shot, overpriced. And you've got people now that are reluctant to sell in the fear that it goes higher. I've had clients recently, we're in a biotech stock and it went 20 times. So clients turned nothing into millions of dollars. And their fear was, if I sell that today. What if it goes up tomorrow, not realizing there's a lotto win? And that happened to me. I'm happy to admit, in one biotech stock, I was up $1 million on paper, right? I could have sold my house and then bought this one, owned it outright, and I could have lived like a baby boomer, Martin. You know, I could have been playing lawn bowls. I could have been looking at one of these lifestyle villages. God knows what goes on there. But I had financial freedom sitting there. I made a couple of mistakes. I've done pretty well on the way up, but that's what's going to happen to people with their $1 million plus gains in the housing market, because it's bloody hard to sell on the way down. And if you look at those sales drops in New Zealand, that's coming to Australia, and good luck trying to catch a bid, because it's going to be like the day I walked into work when the NASDAQ fell on its ass and the bidders were nowhere to be seen. And to get out of these stocks, you had to smack the buyer. And already in New Zealand, they're astute. As you said, they're stepping back. I mean, you know, what's a smart buyer? Paying 13.8 times price to income now, or saying, oh, geez, 12 times is a bargain? Oh, come on. What friggin' drugs are we on? Obviously, meth and cocaine by the figures, but this is all going to end, and we're going to work our way back towards the 70s when life was good. Maybe not the music and fashion, but, you know, throughout history, I can tell you what, the aliens and future economic students are going to laugh at us, because I just think we're so out of kilter. To me, consumerism used to spark joy. No longer. I'd rather just go buy clothes that fit. I don't need a label. I've had to throw out, well, I haven't thrown out my wardrobe. I've just gone to charity. So you're going to see some very well-dressed homeless people in Nollamara. But it's out of whack. And all this dining out, people are going to stop doing it. For example, look at all the craft breweries that are going under. People think it's easy money. I can create a beer that tastes like cat's piss, or I'll try and recreate wine, and then you build this big establishment and wonder why no one's going to pay $15 a pint. You look at people opening up cafes with these weird themes. To me, people that are opening up restaurants and cafes are bigger gamblers than me. Unfortunately, all these businesses are going broke. And what I'm seeing, even in the trendiest area in Perth, you know, look at Leederville, there's vacancies everywhere. And I can see restaurants that open up and clearly they're not going to work. And the only place that's got a queue is the frozen yogurt, which I don't understand. It's like lawyers lining up for a free donut when their billing hours are $500 an hour and they're lining up for a $3 donut, for Christ's sake. Anyway, the whole world is batshit crazy. And I go back to my Tropic Thunder slide. I mean, that just sums it up.
Fair enough. And interesting, you know, we're talking about some of those international currents. Obviously, the Trump effect over the weekend, the possibility of Trump getting in is now probably more likely. He's talking about tariffs. Tariffs, of course, basically are inflationary and potentially can lead to trade wars. We're also of the view, I think, that if Trump is back in, we're going to see effectively further printing of money. And I'd argue that a lot of the issues that we're dealing with can be traced right back to the massive money printing that we've seen over the last 20, 30 years. And in fact, one of the reasons why we have so much inflation in the system is simply because there was so much liquidity created, and that was from the government handouts as well as from the central bank money printing. So I wonder whether what we will see is another attempt from central banks to effectively keep the bubble going a little longer. But of course, as Harry Dent always points out, when you actually have to keep the bubble going longer, it's logarithmically more expensive to keep doing it. So at some point, it's going to run out, right? And at that point, that's when effectively some of these factors that we've been talking about will tend to come home. So the problem is not, is it going to go wrong? The problem is calling when it's going to go wrong, right? Because as you said earlier on, it will happen, but we're not sure when it's going to happen. And the difficulty is for many people, they're trying to get by and make decisions in an environment when they know on one hand that things are overvalued and things are likely to correct at some point, but you've still got to make decisions in the meantime on the way through. And for me, that's the critical, really, really difficult place that many people are in. I see them in my one-to-one conversations. You know, they know intellectually all these things and they know there's a risk to the downside, but you still got to make decisions on the way through. And for me, that's the really tricky, what do you do, what do you not do, which of course puts a lot of people in a very uncertain place.
Yeah, and I cannot fathom the financial stress families are under at the moment. Obviously, you know, I don't go into other people's households, but with variable rates at 6%, school fees, the cost to feed, no doubt many people are living with holes in their teeth. They're putting off going to the dentist. They're probably bailing out of their private health insurance. An interesting point was that they're now seeing people lose their new car warranties because they're not getting their cars serviced. And I know that I was guilty of that during COVID. So it's every family for themselves now. And I reckon a lot of family, you've got to look at your family as a balance sheet. And I know that I'm working harder now to shore up our balance sheet. I know my partner likes the freedom of casual work, so we can visit Southeast Asia. That's what we like to do. But I can assure you, I can live with my TVs. I don't need to go buy new TVs. I'm going to drive my cars till I wear them out, even though one of them's Chinese. I don't know when that's going to run out. But yeah, I'm cutting back on my spending. And for me to buy a jumper or a shirt now, it's a serious decision. When in the old days, I'll go for broke. We'd go to a restaurant, you'd spend $500 without even thinking. And now concerts, it was funny because I booked a lot of concerts that got cancelled, and that was my best investment because I got my money back. But, you know, I say stuff it. I mean, I'm 53 in a few days. I will go to Crowded House at Kings Park. I am going to go see Pearl Jam. To me, life's short, but they're tough decisions, and people have to learn to say no. People learn to have to say no to holding a $5,000 birthday party for their 8-year-old. You've got to say no to that shit. Why would you go to Bali for someone else's wedding? I mean, who cares? It's all going to come to an end, and we're going to realize that all consumerism does, and debt, it's like a noose around your neck. And I've maintained this argument that financial pressure leads to domestic violence. It leads to social unrest. It leads to your kids being neglected. And I know there's a lot of females on X that defend males, and you look at what a male struggling to keep his family above without resorting to gambling or loan sharks. I mean, that's a lot of stress. And I think mental illness, depression through the roof, anxiety. I mean, I think whilst we've got social media and all these social media disposable stars, I think this is a terrible generation. And I'm thankful that I grew up in the 70s and I've had a taste of both. But I can tell you the simple life, waiting all year for a parachute, Game and Watch, and my Mongoose BMX was certainly happier times than what people are going through now. So yeah, it's a terrible time. And if a family honestly has the balls to sell at the top of the market. I mean, I've had a client in Brisbane who's been building a house and it's taken him forever. And finally, he's about to sell. And Brisbane now has overtaken Melbourne as the second most expensive place in Australia. And I said, you've just won lotto in the fact that your delays, and you are probably going to find a greater idiot to get out of that house. So again, it's all about timing. But who'd have thought that Brisbane would overtake Melbourne, the place of the latte and the MCG? So yeah, I think it's a tough time to be struggling financially. And I've learnt from my mistakes, and this time, if the worst comes to worst, I'll own this house, and if I have to live on the pension, well, 3-star beef meat isn't that expensive, Martin, and I don't need olive oil, and I can live on water and still go to a concert. Anyway, it's tough, and it's going to get even tougher because there's no relief. What if we get another rise and then we get a quarter point down? I mean, the needle and the damage is done, because not many people, I saw the writing on the wall, had 6% variable rates on their bingo card.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, one of the things that I come across quite often when I talk to people, again in my one-to-ones, is the thought that, well, the government will save us. They won't let the property market crash. They won't, because of the financial stability risks if they do. So they'll find a way. And of course, they will look back over COVID when we had home builder and we had ultra low interest rates and all of those things. But one of the things that I come back to is that ultra low interest rate cycle that we had, I think we will look back as a unique, and it was a major mistake, but it was a unique time. We are never, ever going to see interest rates go back to those ultra low levels again. What that means is that we might get a slight rate hike. We might go sideways, and then ultimately we might come down a bit, but we're not going to come back to where we were 2 or 3 years ago. So what that means is that the high expense plateau that many people are experiencing at the moment will actually stay. And I don't think the government is capable of getting us out of this particular situation. So in a way, holding false hope that the government will rescue us seems to me to be one of those rather central thoughts, but actually ultimately illusory.
Oh yeah, it's like trying to land an A380 without landing gear. And I look at what's happening with the building. Actually, I probably should have put a slide up on niche living, which they went nuts with the first home buyers. And I think they've got probably 200 unfinished homes at the moment. And the government's trying to step in, and it looks like an absolute disaster for that company who had the market by the balls at one point. And suddenly, I had coffee with a builder, and instead of paying $38 for a doorknob, he's now paying $60. And where building companies went wrong was there's a lot of inexperienced people that underquoted. They tried to get business, they all underquoted, and now look at the disaster that's that building industry, and that helped bring down the Celtic Tiger when it crashed, because of course no bubble ever ends, does it? These things just go on to eternity. But some great points there. And I've made it my ambition to, as soon as I come out of my mortgage cliff, I just like to pay the bloody debt down. I don't need to have all that money in the market. Hopefully I've got a few winners. And that's it. That's for me, because I've come to the conclusion that, I can buy a nice watch off Temu for $18. I don't have to go buy a Rolex. It just doesn't make you happy. And I think one of the greatest flexes in life is not having a Lamborghini or a silicon model, is having a fit body. And that's what I've dedicating my life to having a fit body, being proud of what I'm doing for myself, and looking after the 500 people in this market. And I do provide guidance for people on a lot of financial issues. Some clients, I wish they'd take the money in some suburbs and move into a cheaper place that they own. But why go through the stress? If you've got multiple investment properties, why not panic first? Take the money. If you don't have to work, move to Perth. Don't drive Uber, because you'll only earn about $10 an hour. But there's more to life than being indebted up to your eyeballs, because you can't let go of the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. And I did it a long time ago. I was a cop in Sydney. I had a comfortable income. I could afford to drink. but I found it hard to let go of Sydney. But once I did, I realised that there's more to life than being stuck in traffic for an hour on Parramatta Road. So yeah, there's more to life. Life's, if you think about it, it's short, it's unpredictable. But why should families have to struggle it's going to be a decade-long struggle at least. And if you look at real house prices, why can't they have 10 years in the doldrums? Like Perth's had a long period in the doldrums. So this, I know we've been saying it for a while, but it just goes to show you guys that there's a lot of dumb money around, or should I say illegal money from foreign countries paying cash for properties. Money laundering. It's a fugazi, absolute fugazi. So drug money, money laundering, if that provides you with your exit, your lotto win, bloody take it. But again, hard to sell, Martin. But I think families, those struggling, should get down and do a serious balance sheet and do sometimes, you know, if you think we're stuffed, let's fight it. If you don't have the energy to go out and get a second job, let's face it, most people are tired now. Sell, get out, sacrifice your backyard. You know, all this bullshit about kids needing their own rooms because they have to get changed. I mean, come on, people, let's get back to basics. The life of the 70s and 80s growing up on the northern beaches of Sydney when times were good.
Absolutely. It really just puts this into contrast here. This is actually an interesting question, right? This is from Australia, truly Asia. Where do we keep our, do we keep cash in the bank or buy a house or put in stocks or super, everything's up, bubbles everywhere, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And in a way, that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because everything has sort of bubbled higher. So we have the everything bubble. And now the question is, what happens at this point? It goes right back to my point about, well, you got to make some decisions on the way through. And it's not easy. Although, of course, I look at my term deposit decision from a couple of years ago and thinking, oh, that was still pretty good. I'm still making a reasonable return on money in term deposits at the moment. But I missed out on the AI upside. But, who knows whether the AI upside is real or whether it's going to come back down. In fact, Cookie earlier on asked a question, which I can sort of just segue into that. Are there particular sectors of the Australian market that may be actually, of more interest than others? I think banks are ridiculously expensive. I think some of the mining stocks are overvalued as well. But, is there anything where you think, value is better, or is it shot to pieces all over the place?
I actually think with Telstra lifting their mobile plans, I'd looked at something that you could dollar cost average, and to me that would be something like Telstra. I think the major gold stocks have had a bit of a run. It was funny, I recommended Northern Star to clients at 6.3 cents, and I think it hit $15 at one point. They're currently just under $14 paying dividends. But these gold companies are flush with cash. And again, they need to look at ways to replicate the upside. And what you're going to see with the gold sector is just institutional money flow. No, I wouldn't touch the banks. I noticed there's a stock called WiseTech that's into shipping software and all of that. There's a class action happening on them. Altium's getting taken over. You look at the major mining companies, South32, which is the red-headed stepchild of the Australian mining sector, seems to be doing okay as well. So you can go through your BHP. I wouldn't. Fortescue went 9 cents to just under $300. Can you believe that? But again, I think the miracle for Australia has been the iron ore price. To me, that's an accident waiting to happen, so I wouldn't touch that. I know there's bank accounts now, like we got introduced to one, Macquarie, where you can get 5.25% risk-free, and I'm pretty certain that a lot of viewers wouldn't have my risk tolerance. So again, are you going to miss out putting that green bag in that bin? I'm going to say no. I'd say the risk is to the downside. Would I buy property in Sydney? No. I mean, if I wanted to essentially halve my money in real terms, yes, I would. If I needed to have half the money, I wouldn't go regional because the tree change and sea changes are costly. It's like buying in a Queensland mining town. I still think historically Perth is probably still a little bit expensive, but Jesus, there's some pockets of value, and the vacancy rate is atrocious. It's never been lower, and you might be able to get 7-8% gross yield as well, but you've got to look at the costs of that. Plus, you're probably going to get some upside here in Perth as well, because even though the fundamentals for Perth to go up a long way, economically speaking, don't exist, it's simply going to be the money flow where speculators think that they're going to get the most capital growth, and that leads to a bubble. But you never realize it's a bubble when you're in one until the bugger pops. And yeah, hindsight has 20/20 vision, but if you're conservative, getting 5.25% risk-free, geez, it'd be hard to pass that up at the moment. And what I've done, which has been successful, is I've actually downloaded the Raise app. So it rounds up all my purchases. I put away the money. I don't touch it. Seems to be increasing okay. I'm not expecting much of a capital gain, but that keeps me disciplined, and that'll pay for a holiday. So I'm actually doing some discipline actions outside of buying small companies. And as I say to young people, invest like you're investing in a rock and roll band. Have your rhythm section, your bass player, your drums. Have your solid investments. Have something a little bit more risky as your rhythm guitarist. Have Angus Young. Take some risks if you're young, and have a variable as your lead singer, and invest like a rock group. My son turned 21 on the 4th of July, so I just transferred him a few grand of my stocks. I'm teaching my kids how to invest in the stock market. I'm teaching them to be accumulators. By accumulators, not to look at it, not to chase the dopamine hit. And when you're 21, take a risk because shit, you're 53 in a hurry, as I've found out. So yeah, cash at bank's good. I think the gold price in US dollars and Australian dollars is near historical highs. I'm not the type of speculator investor that chases assets, Martin. I'm contrarian, and I buy assets in companies when no one else wants them. So that differentiates where I stand.
Yeah, good point, Tony. And look, I think that, the idea you've basically just touched on portfolio construction, which is basically saying spread the risks, don't put everything into one category. And when you look at some people, they've got the bulk of their wealth tapped into a property which is illiquid, and that could wobble. If it wobbles, then they've got huge issues. So spreading the risks is good. I think the other point is, over the long term, things tend to go up and to the right, and that's because of the compounding effects and the inflationary effects. But if you look at all the charts and you go back over a longer period, what you will discover is that it goes off to the right, but it doesn't go in a linear fashion. So you can't assume that the run-up we've had over the last little while is going to continue. There were one or two reasons. The AI boom drove a lot of the markets a lot higher. If you look at the equal weights in the US or indeed in Australia, it's a totally different story, right? We've actually got a few stocks doing well, but a lot of stocks not doing well. So again, portfolio is important. And different asset classes have different characteristics, which is why some people want to look at bonds perhaps as well as stocks, as well as property, as well as gold, and those sorts of things. The point there, though, is you have to have a matured approach to building these sorts of portfolios. And you also have to take a view of not just today, but ahead, and you also have to take account of where you are on that life journey. As you say, when you're younger, you can afford to be a bit more sporty, but frankly, I wouldn't be saying to people, even if you're young, put everything into Bitcoin because it'll be fine. May be fine, probably won't be fine. Nobody knows, right? Nobody can value Bitcoin. So if you're going to do Bitcoin stuff, a little bit around the edge, sprinkle a bit of Stardust and hope for your best. That's probably a good strategy, but I wouldn't put all my money there if I were looking at that. So the point there is there are so many externalities, so many difficulties. But it comes ultimately back to, you can't look to the government to save you. You can't look at externalities. So you have to take control of your own life. And I actually think this comes right back to your lifestyle point, right? You've got to make decisions, good decisions. And sometimes that doesn't mean leveraging up to the max. Sometimes it doesn't mean spending a vast amount of money on relatively frivolous things that actually may look good, but really, are they worth it? Are they worth it or not? So it comes back to a lifestyle question, and it comes back to a personal responsibility question. It comes back to a cash flow management question, right? And I come right back to an observation from my surveys. Only half of households I touch have any sense of what money is coming in and what money is going out. So there seems to me to be a fundamental point here about taking personal accountability and responsibility for finances as well, which I think is something that should have been taught in schools and wasn't taught in schools. And unfortunately, many people have this view that money is a magic money machine. You leverage up, you borrow as much as you can, and then you go through this growth cycle. A lot of property investors say, "See, well, we've done really well. We've got all these properties," and they say, "How much debt have you got?" "Oh, we've got a lot of debt." So I think there's a really interesting observation here about psychology, about humans, human mentality, and the psychology of markets in particular. And sometimes I think it's good to reflect on some of these broader issues as we try to wrestle. And as somebody made the point earlier on, with all the people that are under stress and difficult at the moment, this is going to have long-term consequences on people's health and mentality as well. So sometimes taking action early, zigging while everybody else is zagging, is perhaps the right move.
Yeah. And, sometimes you got to take a small loss, and taking a small loss and letting your pride get in the way, it's certainly tough. But it's just manifested now into, I think the biggest threat to people now is complacency. We don't think markets can fall. That's normally when they fall. The greatest threat to a young person's investment career, or anyone really, is dopamine. I get my hit of dopamine playing paddle. It's scientifically determined that you do get additional dopamine because you rally for longer. I don't need the thrill of going out and punting, getting drunk and chasing women. I don't need all that. You learn to regulate your dopamine. Sure, I get excited. We're winning a couple of footy tipping competitions, and these days I can't watch a game now. This is AFL. But yeah, you just learn in life that a lot of the shit you've bought over time, the things you've done, don't mean anything. And my greatest holidays are often a staycation. I'm taking my wife to Vietnam and Cambodia, where I'll be working 6 a.m. to midday. What beautiful hours. So I will be working, and I want to see a different culture, because I've done Europe and it's pretty much the same. You go to Japan, Japan's different. I'd love to go back to Japan, but pretty much people are the same wherever you go. And we're just sheep going to these tourist destinations. And for far too long, humans are being sheep. It's the world's greatest shearing shed. And now we're getting to the point where, the party's over, people. And as I said, it's every family for themselves. And those that don't have anything are going to resort to gambling. They're going to resort to crime. So if you're loaded, dress like you're homeless. Make that your flex. Drive a Datsun 120B around. Drive a shitbox. Go eat at Macca's. Why would you flex wealth in this country when there's people that want to take what you've got. So again, you just got to keep your wits about you. So yeah, certainly interesting times. I don't see, there's no short-term solution out of this. The government will not save us. They're not going to go and finish all those niche living homes that haven't been finished. They're not going to pay your mortgage. Hey, great, guys, we get a couple of free electricity bills, which is actually probably going to contribute to inflation, for Christ's sake. You know, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. That's what it's like. And geez, we were close to one of them, weren't we?
Absolutely. And Tony, as we come to the end, very interesting little question here, which I just lost it. Hang on. Yeah, here we go. This is from Tristan. I think it's quite a good way to end the show here. So what advice would you give to someone who is first investing with a small cash flow in the current environment?
So they've made a first investment.
Yeah. So the advice is, what advice to someone who is starting to invest but with a small cash flow?
Well, what I do, if you're focused on the stock market, I just think you've really got to go to a discount broker. I think that's how you make a start. But you just get involved. And I've had a lot of people over the years that have said, I'll come to you when I've got more money, and that's never the case. I'm happy for anyone to watch the video that I put out on my career in the stock market. I go through 3 high quality stocks, but they're small cap mining companies that are underpinned with management and resources. So they are certainly risky. Again, invest like you're putting together a group of performers. Look at that. But if you're looking to get started, you want to go somewhere where you're not paying 10, 15% commission. So you might be able to trade for $10, learn, take a risk. And I think we've done quite well out of the negatively correlated ETFs. They've paid dividends along the way, but now, you might like to take a bet against the overpriced indices, knowing that it could go on a little bit. In terms of books on the stock market, there hasn't been a good one in a while. I'm actually planning to write my next book, which will go deeper into psychology. It'll say, well, this is the type of company you should buy. I'll actually be going through the entire ASX with a highlighter soon. There'll be a couple of gems that I'll pick up from that. So I'm going to reveal on another financial media source my highest conviction stock market idea, but I've got to reiterate to people it's a small company, but I can value companies, Martin. That's what I'm paid to do. So if you're young, have a crack. Look at the Raise app. Look at the legality of it. I'm satisfied it works. Round up your purchases, have a regular savings plan, and be an accumulator. And don't think you need to blow money. And certainly don't waste your money on women, cars, and booze. That's my advice.
And I think the concept of saving a little continually, right, is a really important discipline. And whether you actually then go and, buy at points in the market, the averaging concept, or whether you actually put into a savings account and get some interest coming through, depends on your risk aversion and, where you want to be. But the discipline of saving, even if it's a small amount, is hugely, hugely important. We don't teach our kids enough about that. So many of them just see mum and dad using their credit cards and think that magic is, it's money, magic, money, magic. It doesn't matter, No, show them the value of money. It's really important. So a lot of people haven't got the sense of the need to save. So I think saving is a really important discipline. The other point there is a lot of people on the other side don't know what they're spending. So keep a record of what you are spending and ask yourself, am I spending well? Because quite often what I see in my surveys is people are not spending necessarily what they should perhaps be spending on. Too many subscriptions to streaming services and other bits and bobs. And you think, well, hang on a moment, how many of those do you really need, right? So unfortunately, we get caught up in this consumer-driven society that we're part of. So I think there are some important lessons here. Tony, I want to say thank you so much. Just to put up your website, tonylocantro.com.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. Please feel free to reach out. And once I've paid off this house and can live like a baby boomer, I'd love to go out to schools and teach kids financial literacy in an honest way, where I just don't give a crap about money. So my goal, obviously, before I hit my mortgage cliff, is to pay this house off, be satisfied with what I've got, and give a real education to kids that they can take forward in their lives, because this generation needs to be taught properly. They need some home truths, and they need a good kick up the arse. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Tony. And the reason that DFA is here and what the world is here is because I believe there's this huge education deficit. And, we're not getting the full story. We're not getting the truth about what's going on. What we try to do on this channel is to, raise some thoughts and perhaps help people to think differently about some of the situations. Finances can be a nightmare for many people. Huge amounts of debts can be a nightmare for many people, but there are ways through, but you have to think differently. And that's what we're trying to talk about. Tony, I want to say thank you very much. I'm going to take you off air now, and I'm going to close the show. I look forward to doing another show with you down the track.
I'm always available, Martin.
Look forward to it, Tony.
Thanks.
See you soon. Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
So there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. Tony, of course, always great value, but some really important points here. Just to say that next week, Cameron Murray will be on, Dr. Cameron Murray. We're going to be talking about some of the recent observations he's got around superannuation, for example, and his research on the housing market. So that'll be, I think, worth listening to and watching. So mark your diaries for the live stream next Tuesday. Obviously, we'll release our normal shows every day, which are recorded, and there'll be more coming very soon. And just before I go, what's the dogs doing? The dogs are in their baskets. They've been around and about a bit, but they're in their baskets now, so they're looking pretty relaxed. So they've enjoyed the show, obviously. And I'll leave you now. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. Thank you very much, Super Chats, particularly to Jason for the contribution he made there. Really appreciate it. It does help to cover some of the costs of what we do. I'll look forward to seeing you on the next show. And meantime, take care and spend wisely. This is Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, signing off. Cheerio.